Diesel and James. Gordon was re-railed and shunted into the sheds at Barrow, where an engine would come to collect him in the morning. When he awoke, he saw James taking on water in one of the sidings. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "The Fat Controller sent me to take you home with my coaches. He told me that putting you back on the rails meant that the workmen had to inspect the line for any damage. And since Pip and Emma were at Tidmouth and I was at Vickerstown when the line was declared safe again, he knew that Pip and Emma's express would be running late as a result, so he decided to send me to take some of their passengers this far and to bring you home along with me on the way back. I expect he also wants me to take the passengers I'm collecting from here. One of the shunting engines here is just rearranging my train and appears to be finishing." He gave a friendly beep on his whistle as the shunter who was coupling the brake coach to the other end of the train approached them, and took it back when he saw who that shunter was. After he had been sent away from Sodor, Diesel had been sold to a factory at the industrial estate in Barrow, while some of his brothers were being withdrawn from British Railways. When he arrived at the factory, he was still full of the idea that he was revolutionary, and had insisted to Diesel's working alongside him that they were too. But the gradual replacement on the main line of Diesels with electric engines was visible for almost all to see. Diesel had predictably stuck to his views that Diesels were best, but eventually the gradual decline of his factory had meant that he had seen his colleagues be sent off for scrap. This had had a hard impact on Diesel. Now he realized he wasn't revolutionary anymore, but dispensable, like what he had previously thought steam engines to be. He had only just arrived in the yard that morning and wasn't too keen on being anywhere near the Sudrian engines. "What are you doing here?" James sneered. He had accepted Diesels by now, but he, like the others, detested troublemaking Diesels. Diesel growled. "I work here now, my dear James," he replied. "Don't give me that! You're obviously going to try and send Gordon off for scrap!" James said angrily. "The thought is tempting, but I have other priorities now," oiled Diesel. "Oh yes? Like spreading lies about other engines amongst the trucks, or ramming trucks into buffers?" James growled suspiciously. Diesel was about to yell back at him when he remembered a train was due out. To James's chagrin, he saw that Flying Scotsman was preparing to take the train instead of him. Gordon watched on enviously, grateful for having had the opportunity to catch up with his brother following his ordeal last night, but wishing he could double-head the train with him. What happened next made the two steam engines laugh like anything. Diesel's driver was supposed to be wearing spectacles. At least that was what it said on his medical forms. But the driver had carelessly left them at the fuel pump when he was cleaning them while refueling his engine. Diesel approached the coaches much too fast and rammed into the back of them, scratching his paintwork and damaging the brake coach's buffers. His driver was thrown to the back of the cab, having stood up in a panic, preparing to jump clear. Fortunately, his injuries weren't too bad, but he was sent to hospital for treatment. It was also lucky that Flying Scotsman wasn't on the same line yet, otherwise the damage could have been worse. The passengers weren't hurt badly, but they were cross. The coaches had been pushed 8 meters along the platform while they were boarding, and the damaged brake coach meant Flying Scotsman had to take the unhurt coaches clear of the platform while James shunted another brake coach onto the train and took the damaged coach to the repair shop. The air was blue with the station master's frustration. He told Diesel to fetch James's goods and then return to his shed. Diesel, who had spotted James and Gordon laughing at him, decided to pay James out. So he came up with a plan. When he found James's goods train, he asked them to bump James. "He's a stinky old steamy who thinks working with trucks is beneath him. He's not fit to run the line. Will you bump him, please?" The trucks were delighted. The last time a truck had been asked to bump an engine was nearly 40 years ago, when Mavis had asked them to bump her past the level crossing on Toby's line. They giggled and chatted about it. "Just keep it a secret and tell no one I asked you," Diesel told them. The trucks promised. "Here you are, James," Diesel said as he shunted them into place. "Station master's orders." "What?" exclaimed James. "Dirty trucks from dirty sidings? I won't, so there." "You will," said the station master, "especially since it's extra ballast you need. The Fat and Small controllers told me about it. The Arlesdale Railway's having some ballast work done to its track, using its own ballast for the job, so you're taking this train for your ballast whether you like it or not." James gulped. The trucks were new, so it would take all the patience of an engine like Edward, Donald or Douglas to get them running nicely. What made it worse was that the trucks were ballast trucks, the worst trucks an engine ever had to put up with. He backed onto them with a bump, attempting some authority. "Come on, come on!" They followed so quietly that James thought he had them under control. He took them safely across the Vicarstown Bridge and quickly climbed up Gordon's Hill. He was about to slow down when the trucks played their tricks. "On, on, on!" they whispered to each other. They were so quiet that when they banged their buffers together, James hadn't time to pin down his brakes and was sent hurtling down the hill at an alarming speed. "Stop, stop, stop!" he cried, but the silly trucks never heard him. They raced through Edward Station, shocking everyone. Edward, who was watching from the platform, wisely backed away to fetch the breakdown train. James and his trucks picked up more speed as they went down the line. James's brakes screamed on, but the harder the trucks pushed, the faster they went. They raced along the main line, overtaking Bear, who was pulling a fast goods, and swerved into the sidings at Crosby. As his crew jumped clear, James shut his eyes. There was a tremendous crash, and James found himself lying on one of the sidings. 6 trucks spoilt the landscape by lying in a line behind him, while the remaining 4 trucks and brake van remained on the line. Edward puffed up alongside with the breakdown train, and Boko, who hadn't been needed that particular moment, rolled up to take over the rescue while Edward took the unhurt trucks away. "Come on, you lot, there'll be no nonsense, please," Edward scolded. The trucks giggled, but a stern look from Edward told them he was not one who would let them take advantage of him. The Fat controller spoke to James. "I know you're not to blame for the accident, but the station master at Barrow told me you had been rude to Diesel. I know you don't trust him, but I expect better of my engines than to jump to conclusions. Diesel was there to help. His factory closed and he had nowhere else to go, so to insult him the way you did was certainly asking for trouble. I will not punish you this time, as I think this crash was enough, but I would advise you very strongly to be careful about how you judge matters before you know the truth." The station master at Barrow also spoke severely to Diesel. "If this happens again, I shall send you away, and I don't think you want that, do you?" Both men told their engines to think about their actions. Needless to say, both engines did think about each other. They wanted to pay each other out somehow,